Hi, everyone. Dr. Vicky here, speaking to you from the Seeds of Transformation Healing Center. We're going to look at the first 9 days of December. That's December 1st to December 9th. I'm calling it the first week of December, and we'll see the astrology of that week. So let's get right into it. For those of you who want to know about the numerology and the Kabbalah of this month, I'll talk about it a little bit with this, but specifically, there is another video. You can check that out. All right. All right. What am I doing here? I'm sharing my screen. All right. Okay, so let's take a look. So we start right in on on the first. We have Mercury ingress into Capricorn on the first. On the 2nd of December, Mercury makes a waning sextile to Saturn. Saturn is still at the very beginning of Pisces. It went direct on the 4th of November and then very, very slowly started moving forward. And Saturn in that first degree of Pisces has been challenging any planets that have gone into Sag. And of course, we're in Sag season, so we know that it has been challenging the Sagittarius planets. It is a last quarter square, and so it's a crisis in consciousness or a crisis in faith. And so we are experiencing, as we enter this last month of December, a real crisis in faith. And we're going to go through this specifically, each one with the charts. So this waning sextile with Saturn gives common sense, self-discipline, and prudence. It's a real, these waning sextiles are sextiles of sharing what we know, what we understand, our knowledge, and in the service of humanitarian endeavor and an ability to raise all boats, a very Aquarian ideal. So all of these waning sextiles have the underlying energy of Aquarius and all the things that Aquarius stands for. On the 3rd of December, Venus is making her last quarter square to Pluto. Venus and Pluto, of course, have a very contentious, often, relationship, but deeply feeling and emotional. When Venus and Pluto come together, there's always deep feeling that can verge on control issues, can verge on obsession, or can bring the soul to a higher level of love. And so everything's a double-edged sword in this world of duality. We also have on the 3rd Mars making a waning inconjunct to Jupiter. Whenever there's an inconjunct, there's a crisis and a need for an adjustment of some sort. The waning inconjuncts require emotional adjustments. The adjustments that we need to make actually come from the outside in, somebody, some other person, some other entity, some other energy impresses upon us the need to let go of some emotional baggage, actually. We have be mindful of any tendencies to subtly assert your superiority by helping others. So, I'm going to help them, and it's because I know more than they know. People may not want your help. On the 4th of December, we have Venus moving out of the love of Libra into Scorpio. So she kind of changes her outfit. In Libra, she's beautiful. She's beautifully decorated, and she has her hair just so, and she's, just beautiful and beautiful, and what's the word? Balanced, and there's a poise and an understanding of what is expected of her by others. And then she moves into Scorpio, the energy of confrontation. So she kind of changes her outfit, and maybe she puts on the dominatrix outfit, perhaps, but she definitely has control. Venus in Scorpio definitely has control of the reins, so to speak. And then she makes on the next day, she will make a waning trine to Saturn, which further brings that sort of constraint, that energy of constraint in. This offers a unique blend of maturity and responsibility within your personal relationships. Okay. So she knows what she wants and she's going to get it. And she's going to actively employ her wiles to get what she wants. Okay. That's what Venus is doing right now. On Wednesday, December 6th, we have Neptune, one of the transpersonal planets, change direction. When the transpersonals, the planets that are further out, they spend a lot of time retrograde during the year, of course, because they're so far away. And of course, retrograde simply means, from our perspective, it seems like they're moving backwards, but they're not actually moving backwards. We're just trying to catch up with each other with that kind of stuff. It's like a visual Doppler effect, right? And it stations direct at 25 degrees of Pisces. The interesting thing about this is the symbol. It says a religious organization succeeds in overcoming the corrupting influence of perverted practices and materialized ideals. The power of the soul to intervene in the personal life and to induce necessary catharsis. So this is the soul's, putting down the rules, like, nope, can't do this anymore. This is not the direction, and you need to go in this other direction, right? That's the energy. But I find it very interesting because if you've followed like the Catholic Church, and the Pope, which he's a very liberal sort of leftist kind of Pope, and he's very Jesus-like, right? And so he wants to walk in the footsteps of Jesus, not in the shadow of Jesus, right? Like Cash Peters always talks about. And so he is walking in the light. And part of that is welcoming people who have, gays, or, people who love, differently, into the church, and also a lot of forgiveness around the issues of the sexual abuse scandals in the church. Very open to that, taking responsibility. There are certain things he hasn't yet, women being priests and stuff. He hasn't done that yet. He may or may not, but he has really transformed, and he's getting a lot of flack. Don't think that the Catholics are happy about this, especially the Catholics in the US, the Opus Dei Catholics, which there are plenty of those. Again, we're looking at a new paradigm, and it's even seen within in our large sort of religious institutions. Even with the evangelicals sort of moving away from Trump, because their leaders are saying, well, this guy doesn't really, like, he's not really on our page, so we can see that there is this shift and change in large religious organizations, which is, a time, it's time for it. It's about time. All right. So and then we also have on the 7th, we have Mercury trine Jupiter. Now this Mercury trine Jupiter usually lasts, has an influence, for like maybe a couple of days, 3 days or so, but we do have Mercury next week. It's not in this grouping of aspects, but next week Mercury does go retrograde. And so instead of this trine being sort of around for 3 days, it's around for like 10 days or longer. And so the trine between Jupiter and Mercury is a flow of energy and information. And so we're going to have a lot of information that comes, a lot of downloads of information. Some of it is going to be what's been going on. We're going to learn a lot more than we knew about certain situations, but it's also in a way a spiritual download. And Mercury and Jupiter are the two planets associated with the way the mind works, and they're actually in attunement with each other. So our logical mind and our intuitive mind are in attunement, and it actually helps with the fact that Mercury will be going retrograde, because when Mercury is retrograde, it's less about reason and more about intuition. And so just know that this month we are going to get downloaded with a whole lot of information, whether it's stuff we hear from the news or stuff we hear from our own explorations, or even if you're meditating, there's a lot, and a lot of that is going to be useful when 2024 comes around. So fret not, do not fear 2024. 2024 is going to be amazing. It's going to be amazing, and there's going to be big changes, but we have to have the information in order to do it. And that's what this month is going to be about, accumulating the information to use at a later date, so to speak. And then on the 9th, we have Venus making opposition to Jupiter, awareness of our values and our beliefs. And of course, the Venus opposite Jupiter is the halfway point of the Venus-Jupiter cycle, which is the cycle of the benefics, right? And so possibly some really good news coming our way. All right, let's take a look at these happenings. Okay, so Mercury ingress into Capricorn. Here is Mercury moving into Capricorn. As it moves into Capricorn, we notice that it's part of a Yod configuration with Pluto and the Moon, actually, and Saturn. So we have this sextile to Saturn, and of course, I think the next day or the 3rd, we have the exact sextile. We'll talk about it. The vibration of this day is the Judgment card. It's an awakening, and it's actually, this card is associated with Pluto, and here's Pluto opposite the Moon. This is an awareness of the people, those in power, and the people in an opposition to each other. Okay, so there's an opposition between the people and the powerful. And at the same time, we have this sextile between Saturn. So Mercury ingresses into Capricorn, the planet of the mind in the cardinal earth sign of Capricorn, thinking from a place of utilization and practicality. So our Mercury is like, okay, so how are we going to utilize our energy? What talents, what do we have here? What's available to us? How can we be efficient and get the job done? Very much a Capricorn energy, right? It says a Sabian symbol for 1 degree of Capricorn, an Indian chief claims power from the assembled tribe. The power and responsibility implied in any claim for leadership. And so if you are a leader, or if you want to lead, you have to understand that you are responsible. And you first have to be responsible for yourself, and then you can be responsible for others. And we know that in certain situations with certain leaders, that hasn't been the case. And in certain leaders, it has been the case. We have seen leaders take on the responsibility of their office, and we've seen leaders not take on the responsibility of their office, but they will pay, because you always pay. Saturn always makes you pay, and Capricorn is ruled by Saturn. We have Saturn at 2 degrees of Pisces here. Now, why do I have that? Oh, I know why. So we have Mercury move into why do I have that? We have Mercury move into Capricorn. Whenever a planet moves into a sign, I always look at the ruler of that sign and where it's located, to give us an idea of perhaps what it's going to feel like when Mercury moves through Capricorn. And we have Saturn at 2 degrees of Pisces, a squirrel hiding from hunters. The individual need is both to ensure his future sustenance and to protect himself from aggressive social elements. So know that you need to be aware of kind of where the enemy may lie here, or you know what you think and what you know, and you know those people who are not going to necessarily agree with you. And so you just need to be real cautious about the things that you say this month, because they will be reacted to. Not to say that what you have to say isn't true, but again, you may want to wait with the Mercury retrograde coming up. You may want to wait before you actually put it out into the world. You really have to consider all your options here and everything that you know, and how best to put it out there without, because it's an awakening. People are awakening to a new reality, and that can be very scary. It's a plutonic time, and a lot of times we face things that are very difficult to face, especially with this Pluto opposing the moon here in this chart. Okay. And Pluto activates. Like the yod in itself is a lot of stress, but it's the Pluto that activates the yod. And so it requires adjustments to be made by both the powerful and the people. On the 2nd of December, we make that waning trine to Saturn. Of course, Saturn is still at 2 degrees of Pisces, and now Mercury's at 2 degrees of Capricorn. This is a time for progressive change and humanitarian endeavors. Hopefully, we will see more humanitarian aid in places like Gaza, in places where there needs to be humanitarian aid. There's a lot. It's not just, Gaza is not the only thing. It's sort of a man-made issue, but there are also some climate change issue things, and along with man-made issues that we have to start to deal with. We have to start dealing with the issues at hand. This is a world vibration. It's a 21-3 day, and this is a Saturn day, which is interesting because we have Mercury sextiling Saturn. So Saturn becomes even more important in this energy. Squirrel hiding from hunters, that's Saturn, right? Mercury, 3 rose windows in a Gothic church are damaged by war. The necessary realization by any individual making a violent use of collective power that it will lead to inevitable destruction of some of the values ensuring group integration. So whenever you come in with a bazooka, know that the things that you based your society upon will be damaged in it. And I can think of Israel and what's going on in Gaza, and how it's not only certainly dangerous for the folks in Gaza, it's also dangerous for the Israelis, in that they're not gonna, the empathy that the world has for them could be affected negatively because of not what the people have done, but what the leaders have done. It's not the people. It's never the people. It's the leaders. And leaders need to be held responsible. And of course, we're all dealing with Saturn, and the fact that when we get to later in the month, when we have the highlight of the Mercury retrograde cycle in the 1st degree of Capricorn, it deals with the responsibilities of the leaders. So we may see something at that point. All right, here's the sextile. All these charts, I so sorry for anybody who doesn't live in the United States. These are all US charts. We see Pluto in that first house, transformation here, change in how we face the world, so to speak. And moving away from old relationships with foreign powers here into a new relationship, perhaps, 3rd house. All right. Okay, so on the 3rd, we have Venus make her last quarter square to Pluto. This is part of the synodic cycle that began on the 1st day of 2023, when these 2 planets were conjunct at 28 degrees of Capricorn. The symbol for that is a large aviary. The vibration of that day when Venus made a conjunction to Pluto was a 10-1, which is change. It's the wheel of fortune. And so the mighty will fall and the meek shall rise. Okay. The other thing about this particular Venus-Pluto conjunction in Capricorn is that it occurred on the United States Pluto. Yes, sirree, Pluto. So the culmination of the Venus-Pluto opposition. So when we have the we have the initial seed, which is the 28 degrees of Capricorn, a large aviary. It really is about many different voices within a circumscribed area, right? Which is very much when you think about the United States as being the place where many, many different cultures come together, and there are many, many different voices, it can be overwhelming. But to understand the spiritual nature of that, and really kind of because of that, we have to come from that higher spiritual perspective, because we don't have a choice, right? We don't have a choice. And we're in the midst of our Pluto return. So, Pluto return, when we first started, Pluto in Capricorn was slavery. Okay. Um, Now with Pluto in Capricorn, we're looking at the military industrial complex, and we're also looking at the um, in the prison industrial complex, right? So these are two things that we're going to have to work through as Pluto, as we move towards our second Pluto return, if God willing, Goddess willing, we make it to a second Pluto return. But of course, we're not going to see it in these bodies, because that's like 250 years from now. Hopefully, we'll do our due diligence now. And so if we do come back, it won't be quite as fraught as this time has been. All right. Anyway, so we have the initial conjunction, the culmination of that, the fruit of that seed that's planted at the beginning occurs at the opposition. And so we had the opposition back on the 5th of June, 2023, at 1 degree of Leo Aquarius. That first degree of Aquarius keeps getting hit. It got hit in 2020 with Saturn and Jupiter. We've had Pluto go in and out at that first degree, and we've had a number of conjunctions occur at that degree. I can't think of them off the top of my head. I should actually do a list of that so we can sort of see how we're entering this Aquarian age that we find ourselves in. But it was right at the beginning of that. And now we're at a crisis in consciousness. Now we're at that last quarter, 3/4 of the way through square. And we find Venus at 29 degrees of Libra. She's very powerful in Libra, so this is a power place for her. And of course, Pluto at 29 degrees of Capricorn. So this is a crisis in consciousness. Venus at 29 of Libra, mankind's vast and enduring effort to reach for knowledge transferable from generation to generation. A deep sense of participation in and commitment to social processes which seek to bring all men truth and a greater life. It takes my breath away and gives me chills when I say that. Square Pluto and Capricorn, a woman reading tea leaves. The ability to see a signature of hidden meaning in every occurrence, drawing one's attention. This is a powerful time. And the vibration of this day is a 22-4, which is the Fool, which is about a leap of faith to believe, a leap of faith that we can move into a world in which a reach for knowledge is transferable from generation to generation, an understanding that we are all in this together and that we need to read the signs. I saw the sign and it opened up my eyes. I saw the sign. And the interesting thing about this chart here is we can see that we have Pluto in that first house of, again, US chart, apologies. And Venus up here in the 10th house. This is the house of the president, really. And the square that's requiring us to be aware of what is at stake, what needs to be done. Okay, powerful symbols. And the ascendant is right on the galactic center here, this 27 degrees of Sag. So we are getting help from that. Of course, Pluto is on the United States Pluto, And Venus will be squaring that. Will be squaring the United States Pluto. All right. And of course, Venus is the energy of the feminine, and the feminine has a stake. Now, there's a lot of things happening on this day. We also have Mars making inconjunct to Jupiter, a need for psychological adjustments brought on through crisis. Mars, in this case, a US chart, Mars is in the house of the military, also the house of health, the healthcare system here. And we have Jupiter in the 11th house. This could be a time when we get funding for the military here. This aspect is centered around the use or abuse of intense desire and willful emotionality. We are to eventually make long-lasting adjustments on the feeling level. This is from my favorite book on aspects, Dynamics of Aspect Analysis by Bill Tierney. I don't think you can. I don't think it's. I think you have to get it. It's not in print anymore. But if you want to understand aspects, this is the book to get. So, we have Jupiter at 7 degrees of Taurus, a woman, the woman of Samaria at the ancestral well. Inconjunct Mars at 7 of Sag. Cupid knocks at the door of the human heart. So we have the ancestral well symbol, the meeting of the traditional past and the creative spirit pointing to the future. So this is about a willingness to be open to a different way or a new way. Inconjunct Mars in Sag, the stirring up of individual longings for romantic love. Or just for love, right? For love. And here's the aspects here. All right, we're still in the Fool. So this is all about new, like this leap of faith. On the 4th of December, Venus ingresses into Scorpio. That day happens to be okay, this 23-5. This is the wrong card. This should be the King. Oops. Sorry. That should be the King of Swords. Unless I added wrong. Let me see. December 16, 23. So this should be the King. I mean, the King of Wands. So ignore the Queen at your own peril, but it's the King. So ingress into Scorpio, one of Scorpio, crowd sightseeing bus on a city street, the fundamentally human eagerness to expand one's social horizon and experience the results of collective achievement and a new way of life. Mars, of course, is the co-ruler of Scorpio. So as Venus moves into Scorpio, we look to Mars and we look to Pluto because these are the two planets associated with Mars. Mars is at 8 of Sag. Within the depths of the earth, new elements are being formed. Well, that's interesting. The alchemical fire, which both purifies and transforms the very substance of man's inner life. And so Mars at this element with Venus in Scorpio, we can expect some pretty profound shifts and changes in the way we relate to one another. Venus. Okay. Venus is out for blood, guys. And Pluto, also co-ruler of Scorpio at 29 degrees of Capricorn, a woman reading tea leaves. Interesting that we have a woman in this symbol. Her ability to see patterns reflected in the world. Powerful intuitive forces here, powerful feminine energy. Okay, powerful feminine energy. No wonder I put the Queen there. That was my fault, but hey, the Queen is the Queen after all. Yeah, so where do we have Venus here? There's Venus. In the United States, in the house of our allies and our enemies. So a new sort of relationship with our allies and with our enemies, right? And so very, very interesting. We have Mars here in our shared resources, and we have Pluto in the 10th house. I want to say that this feels to me like, hey, look, we're giving you all this money for stuff. You have to start listening to us. It's now we have more influence in this situation. Now you can take that in whatever direction you want. That's what I see here. Okay. On the 7th Tuesday, which of course, isn't that, is that VJ Day or VE Day or the 7th? Or was the 7th, when we got to World War II? I'm sorry, I don't, and it all happened like around that day. December was a big time of shifting, changing back then in the 40s. And a lot of what we're experiencing now, especially in Israel and Gaza, is part of that whole after World War II energy. And we are sort of seeing how that's worked out, and perhaps we need to do something differently here. This day vibrates to a 26-8, which is the Page of Wands, which is messages from spirit. So keep your ears open with this energy, with this trine. It brings support to Venus and Saturn, right? So let's look at, we have Venus at 2 of Scorpio, a delicate bottle of perfume lies broken, releasing its fragrance. Keyword here is surrendered. Trine 2 degrees of Pisces, squirrel hiding from hunters. The individual needs to both ensure his future sustenance and to protect himself against aggressive social elements. So self-protection and surrendering. The perfume bottle is like, you no longer have the perfume because the bottle is broken. There's nothing to contain it, but we can still smell it. We still have the memory of it. So, and it's Venus. So I think there's like a change in relationship that you can still have pleasant memories of as you smell what's left of the fragrance, but the container of that relationship no longer is there. And so there needs to be a re-establishment of the perhaps parameters of a relationship that was one way at one point and now it's different. Okay. All right. On the 6th of December, we have Neptune stationing direct. This is there are 3 transpersonal planets mostly that we work with: Pluto, Uranus, and Neptune. Pluto went direct last month, I believe. We have Neptune going direct this month, and next month Uranus goes direct. And then all the transpersonal planets are moving forward. So it stations at 25 degrees of Pisces. A religious organization succeeds in overcoming the corrupting influence of perverted practices and materialized ideas. I talked about that a little bit, right? Or was that in the other video? I don't know. Anyway, I'm thinking of the Catholic Church in this particular symbol, just because that's what came to mind for me, and how it is changing its views on homosexuality, how it's changing its views on the sexual abuse stuff. I like the Pope. He's a good guy. The power of the soul to intervene in the personal life and to induce necessary catharsis. So let's dig into this just a little bit deeper. According to Dane Rudger, every man is a church that has a soul as its God. But most men forget the soul and live according to the dogmatic rules and habits, which not only have become empty of inner meaning, but very often have been perverted by the demands of the senses and the emotional nature, and by the ego with its rationalizing intellect. The purging or catharsis is needed to restore not only fresh and creative spontaneity, but even more the contact with the soul and the God-ordained Dharma. The key word here is purification. We are the ones we've been waiting for. It is time for us to realize that it is in our hands and in our heart and in our mind to change the world into a world that we want to live in. And this is a reminder, and a powerful one at that. And interestingly enough, the vibration, the 25-7, is the Knight of Wands, taking your knowledge, your understanding on the road proselytizing, talking about, shining your light, shining your light, shining your light, and going around and letting people know. But of course, we have to be careful still. So that's just, On Thursday, December 7th, Mercury makes a waning trine to Jupiter. Disseminating trine of understanding and knowledge, part of the Mercury-Jupiter synod that began at the conjunction on the 28th of March 2023 at 19 degrees of Aries. 19 degrees of Aries, the magic carpet of Oriental imagery, the use of creative imagination. We can utilize our creative imagination to create the world we want to live in. And then we have to back it up with action. But first, you have to have the vision, right? You have to have the visual. Now, Mercury is at 7 of Capricorn. A veiled prophet speaks, seized by the power of God. Well, that's pretty interesting. The ability to act as a mouthpiece for the revelation of a transcendent will and a truth determining future action. I talked about this, right? Trine Jupiter at 7 of Taurus, the woman of Samaria at the ancestral well, the meeting of traditional past and creative spirit pointing to the future. This is all about the future. This is all about the future we want to see, not the present that we are presently being exposed to, but the future that we want to see. And where do you create that future? In the present moment. So you need to make sure that you are fostering and supporting the life you want. Okay. On Saturday, December 9th, Venus makes an opposition to Jupiter at 7 Scorpio Taurus. This is the halfway point of the Jupiter-Venus synod, the culmination and the fruit of seeds planted at their initial conjunction, which occurred March 2nd of 2023, incidentally vibrating to that 12-3 vibration that we find ourselves in this month, right? The Hanged Man. An unexploded bomb reveals an unsuccessful social protest, the immature evaluation of the possibility of transforming suddenly the status quo. So change needs to happen, but the kinds of change that people are asking for may not exactly be, they don't know enough. They're not advanced enough. If you know enough, and if you are advanced enough, and you're holding a different vision for the future instead of just a reactive vision, because a lot of this stuff is reactive. I don't like this. I don't like that. I don't want this. I don't want that. Yeah, fine. What do you want? And you create, and what you do want, you create through that visualization of what kind of life do you want to have. You're utilizing your creative imagination and looking at the signs, right? So we're being, again, required to focus on the life that we want to create instead of what's being shown to us. We have the co-creative power of spirit. You have to remember, but that requires, to a certain extent, less stress on what we as personalities want and really what we have come in as souls to do and to have and to experience and to show the way. So the initial conjunction, I talked about that. Now Venus is at 7 of Scorpio, deep sea divers, the will to explore the hidden depths of all experiences and to search for primordial causes. So this is really about, remember, Venus in Scorpio is getting down to the bottom line around issues of relationship and where we feel betrayed, where we have been wronged, and where we need to practice forgiveness and letting go. Ultimately, that's what it's about. Opposing Jupiter at 7 degrees of Taurus, the woman of Samaria at the ancestral well. This symbol is very powerful and potent. And when you look into it, if you look into Dane Rudger's description of this, he speaks of the woman of Samaria meeting Jesus at the well. And she was an unmarried woman. And so she was already sort of an outsider. And she was a woman at a time when women didn't have power. And yet she met Jesus, and she saw the truth of things in a way, and the ability for us to connect with our Christ consciousness, but it comes through those people who were not invested in the social order. It comes in through the outsider. And I know all of you out there are outsiders because you're listening to me, and I'm an outsider. And when you're an outsider, you have a perspective that the insider doesn't have. And so it behooves us to do what we need to do to get the information and to get people aware that they have a choice. The meeting of the traditional past and the creative spirit pointing to the future. What kind of future do you want to create? All right. So that's that for this week. Let me stop the share here. All right. So powerful times we're in. Remember, focus on the life you want to see. Do what you have to do. Protect yourself. You don't have to go out and fight these people who are saying, I want this and I want that and I want a lock and key on women's private parts and just the change is here. It's already happened. We're already in the light. It's just that the consensus has to catch up with it. So focus on the light, focus on your light, shine your light, live your life to the best of your ability. And we will all make it to the other side of this, and it'll be a much better, more loving world. I really, truly believe that. As a ambulance went past my house. So yeah, I know you didn't hear that, but I did. All right, guys, have yourself a great week. Take care. I'll see you again next week for the astrology of the week ahead. Until then, be careful, be loving, be aware, be awake. We're all waking up, guys, no matter what certain folk want us not to do. It doesn't matter. We're already there. Okay, take care. Namaste.